Rainy night in Geneva, wind lashing against the glass windows of a small lakeside cafe. Ethan Miller, 37-year-old single father, sat alone at an empty table, cappuccino long gone cold. His second blind date ever, and once again, he'd been stood up. Suddenly, the door burst open. Two blonde twin girls, soaked from rain, ran in screaming, "Mr. Ethan, please save our mom. Her car is sinking under the bridge." He jumped up, heart stopping mid-beat. "How do you know my name?" One girl held up a trembling phone, showing an unsent message on the screen. "If I don't make it, please find Ethan Miller." A message from Sophie Hart, the woman he'd been waiting to meet tonight. Ethan Miller, 37 years old, single father, worked as an ambulance maintenance technician at Geneva Rescue Department, keeping emergency vehicles running, fixing what broke, maintaining what saved lives. His wife Anna had died 3 years ago in a highway accident near Lausanne when the ambulance she was riding in got trapped during sudden catastrophic flooding. She'd been a paramedic, responding to an emergency call, doing her job, serving others. The ambulance malfunctioned, systems failed, couldn't evacuate in time. She drowned waiting for rescue that arrived 5 minutes too late. 5 minutes. The difference between life and death, between having a wife and being a widower, between Lily having a mother and growing up with just her dad and questions that couldn't be answered. Since that day, Ethan worked relentlessly, almost obsessively, maintaining every ambulance that came through his garage, checking every system twice, 3 times, making absolutely certain no one else lost someone they loved because equipment failed at the critical moment. He raised his daughter Lily, 9 years old now, a cheerful, resilient girl who constantly told her father he needed to smile more, "Dad. The world isn't all sad. Mom wouldn't want you to be kid forever." His co-workers, worried about him, had set him up with a blind date through a matchmaking app with a woman named Sophie Hart. They'd told him she was a widow too, 33, CEO of HeartMed Innovations, a medical technology company that manufactured emergency medical devices, someone who might understand loss, who might understand him. That rainy evening, he arrived at the lakeside cafe early because he was always early, chose a table near the window where he could watch people pass by, feeling awkward and hopeful and terrified in equal measure. Dating felt like betrayal somehow, like moving on meant forgetting Anna. But Lily had said, with that wisdom children sometimes have, "Mom would want you to be happy, Dad. She told me that once, that she wanted both of us to be happy even if she couldn't be there." 30 minutes passed, then 45, then an hour. She didn't come. No text, no call, no explanation. He felt that familiar disappointment, that confirmation of every fear that he was too broken, too damaged, too boring for anyone to want. Maybe single dads with baggage weren't appealing. Maybe he should just accept being alone. He was about to leave, had already put money on the table for the coffee he'd barely touched, when the cafe door crashed open violently, hitting the wall, making everyone jump. 2 identical girls, maybe 7 years old, burst in dripping wet from rain, faces panicked, crying, "Mr. Ethan! Mr. Ethan Miller! Our mom's car is flooded! She's drowning! Nobody will help her!" He stood up fast, adrenaline overriding confusion. "How do you know my name? Where's your mother?" "St. Pierre Bridge. We ran all the way. The police said to wait for rescue, but Mom can't breathe underwater. She's going to die like our dad died." Something in their terror cut through his hesitation. He grabbed his jacket, ran outside into pouring rain, jumped into his pickup truck that still had his emergency kit in the back. The girls scrambled into the back seat without asking, giving him frantic, rapid-fire directions. At the bridge, chaos reigned like something from a disaster movie. A white SUV tilted dangerously in rising floodwater, headlights flickering weakly beneath the surface like dying stars. Emergency lights flashed. Police cars. A small crowd gathered, but nobody was in the water. Everyone waiting, everyone safe on shore. A young police officer blocked his path. "Dangerous, sir. Nobody goes in. Professional water rescue is coming. Should be here in 10, 15 minutes. Ethan shouted, "If we wait 15 minutes, she'll die. I know water rescue. I trained for this." Sir, I can't let civilians. But Ethan was already running, already diving into the freezing current that felt like knives on skin, using his maintenance tools that he always carried to break the already cracked window, pulling an unconscious woman from the vehicle wedged under the steering wheel, her face pale blue in the darkness, lips the color of death, body limp and heavy. On the shore, he performed CPR in pouring rain while police and paramedics finally arrived, feeling like he was back in that moment 3 years ago when they told him Anna had drowned, feeling helpless and enraged at how fragile life was, how quickly everything could end. The woman suddenly gasped, coughed violently, water pouring from her mouth, eyes opening unfocused and confused. Who are you? Where are my daughters? Ethan, the person you were supposed to meet tonight. Your daughters are safe. They're here. They saved you by finding me. She started crying, not from pain, but relief and shock and understanding. Thank you for not leaving. Thank you for not waiting. The twin girls threw themselves at their mother, all three of them shaking and sobbing with relief and fear and exhaustion. In that frozen moment, everything changed. The date he'd thought was canceled. The woman he'd thought had rejected him. The connection that almost didn't happen because of traffic and rain and timing. She looked up at him through tears and rain. I'm so sorry I was late. There was an accident. My car. I tried to call, but my phone went underwater. He laughed despite everything, despite the cold, despite the fear that was still coursing through him. Worth the wait. Definitely worth the wait. Later, much later, when he got home after giving statements to police, after making sure Sophie and her daughters got to the hospital for observation, after everything calmed down, Lily asked while making him hot chocolate, Dad, why do your clothes smell like smoke and river water? Did something happen at work? He smiled, truly smiled for the first time in months, maybe years. I saved someone tonight, Lily. Someone who was supposed to just be a coffee date. Someone who turned out to be much more important than that. Someone I think I was supposed to meet exactly like this. Was she nice? Do you like her? I think so. I hope I get to find out properly, when we're both dry and not terrified. Before leaving the hospital, one of the twin girls had pressed something into his hand when no one was looking. A small handmade bracelet she'd been wearing, made of colored string and beads. So you remember you're our hero, she'd whispered seriously, so you don't forget us. He put it in his pocket, felt its weight there like a promise, like the beginning of something he couldn't quite name yet. The next morning, Geneva newspapers and websites ran the story with dramatic headlines. CEO Sophie Hart rescued by unknown civilian during catastrophic storm. Ethan stared at the headline on his phone during his break at work, coffee going cold in his hand. She was the blind date. The woman he'd saved, the woman whose daughters had somehow known his name, was actually the CEO everyone in the city knew by reputation. HeartMed Innovations, major employer, philanthropist, local celebrity, and he'd pulled her out of a river. He received a formal printed invitation delivered to his garage by courier that afternoon. Please come to HeartMed headquarters tomorrow at 2 p.m. to clarify the incident and receive proper thanks. Professional language that made him nervous, that sounded more like interrogation than gratitude. In the gleaming lobby of HeartMed the next day, every eye turned to him. He wore his work uniform because he didn't own a suit, mechanic coveralls with oil stains that wouldn't come out no matter how many times he washed them, boots that were practical, not fashionable. He felt immediately out of place among executives in tailored clothing, among marble and glass and wealth he'd never known. The receptionist, young woman with perfect makeup and dismissive eyes, looked at him with barely concealed contempt. I'm sorry, this area is for VIP guests only, not for maintenance workers in dirty uniforms. Service entrance is around back. He felt heat rise in his face, that familiar shame of being judged by appearance, by class, by job title rather than character or actions. Sophie Hart invited me. Check your list. Ethan Miller. I'm sure there's been a mistake. Ms. Hart wouldn't invite. Let him in, Sophie's voice, clear and commanding, cutting through the receptionist's dismissal like knife through paper. She walked out from the executive elevator, wearing a white designer blouse, arm still bandaged from the accident, eyes showing gratitude that cut through all the pretense in that lobby. He's the person I owe my life to. Show him the respect he's earned. More respect than I apparently show my own employees, if this is how we treat heroes. The receptionist's face went red. Security stepped back. Everyone suddenly found reasons to look at their phones. Parker, the chief operating officer, a man in an expensive suit with politicians' fake smile and calculating eyes, frowned while approaching. A maintenance technician? He saved you, fine, admirable, but why exactly is he here in our corporate headquarters? Surely a gift basket and thank you card would suffice. Ethan spoke calmly, meeting Parker's eyes without flinching. Because your CEO wanted to know who tampered with her car's brakes to make it explode on that bridge. And I have some thoughts on that. The entire lobby went dead silent. You could hear the elevator ding 3 floors away. People froze mid-step. Sophie stared at him. What are you saying? You think it wasn't an accident? He explained carefully, I used to service the Hart SUV model fleet as part of my job, part of my maintenance contracts. I recognized that sound last night wasn't natural. Brake line failures don't explode like that. They leak, they fail gradually. This was sudden, catastrophic, intentional. Parker stepped forward aggressively, invading Ethan's space. Enough, you're trying to scare her to seem important, to seem like more than just a lucky bystander. Sophie raised her hand. Let him talk, please. Ethan pulled out his phone, showed photos he'd taken at the scene when paramedics weren't looking. See the scoring on the brake line? That's from a cutting tool, not corrosion or wear. Someone wanted that car to fail at high speed. Someone who knew your route, your schedule, your habits, someone who had access. Parker's face went red with anger or fear. Hard to tell which. This is slander, wild conspiracy theory. Security, escort this man out before he causes more disruption. But Sophie was looking at the photos on his phone, zooming in, and her face had gone pale. Understanding dawning, fear replacing confusion. I want these photos sent to my personal email. Now, and I want security footage from our garage reviewed immediately. That evening, Ethan received a text from an unknown number that turned out to be Sophie's personal cell. Can you come to my private garage tonight? I need you to inspect something else. Please, I don't know who to trust anymore, except apparently the stranger who jumped in a river for me. Sophie. He agreed despite knowing it might be dangerous, despite knowing getting involved with corporate intrigue and CEO problems was above his pay grade and possibly fatal. At home, Lily noticed him packing tools. You're going to help her again? Yeah, she needs help. She's in danger. Is she the lady from your date? Yeah, the one who almost wasn't, the one who might be the most important person I've met since your mom. Do you like her? I think I might. Is that okay? Lily hugged him tight. Mom would want you to be happy, Dad. And to help people. You're doing both. At the private garage, Sophie was waiting in shadows, looking frightened in ways CEOs aren't supposed to look, vulnerable in ways powerful people rarely allow themselves to be. I didn't want to leave my daughters at home. I don't trust anyone anymore. Everyone who works for me could be working against me. Her twins were there, hiding behind their mother's legs, remembering Ethan, trusting him because children's instincts about safety are often better than adults. As Sophie led him to her personal vehicle for inspection, Parker's black BM pulled up outside the garage, idling with headlights off, watching, waiting. They weren't alone, and Parker wasn't there to help. Through the window, they watched him make a phone call, his expression cold and calculated and dangerous. Whatever was happening, it was bigger and more dangerous than a tampered brake line. It was life and death. It was corruption worth killing for. HeartMed private garage, 11 p.m., shadows everywhere. Ethan opened the hood, shone his flashlight. Your brake system has a fake chip installed. This isn't factory equipment. It's designed to fail on command. Sophie's voice shook. You mean someone wants to kill me? Someone I work with every day? He nodded grimly. Someone inside your company. Someone with access to your vehicles. Sound outside. Footsteps. Parker and 3 security guards burst through the door. Don't move, both of you! Ethan grabbed Sophie's hand, pulled her behind a car, grabbed a fire extinguisher, and sprayed foam, creating a smoke screen. They escaped through the back exit, ran through dark streets, hearts pounding. The city that had seemed so safe now feeling like a trap. In an abandoned warehouse Sophie used for storage, catching their breath, she broke down and told him everything. Parker had been embezzling from the product safety fund for 2 years, millions of dollars. She'd discovered it 3 weeks ago during an audit, confronted him privately, gave him a chance to resign quietly. He'd threatened her instead. Your twin daughters are beautiful. Would be a shame if something happened to them. She'd been terrified into silence, until yesterday when he'd sent another message. Your blind date might be your last date ever. Ethan held her hand tight, and I showed up exactly when you needed someone. As Ethan examined the chip more closely under better light, his blood ran cold. He recognized the manufacturer code, the same faulty chip design that had been installed in the ambulance 3 years ago. The ambulance that failed, that couldn't evacuate during the flood, that killed his wife Anna. His hand started shaking. Your company made these specific chips? Sophie looked at the code, covered her mouth. Parker managed that division. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know they were defective. He turned away, voice breaking. I lost my wife because of these chips, because someone cut corners, because profit mattered more than lives. Sophie started crying. I'm so sorry, Ethan. I'll make this right. I'll help you. Together. They worked through the night. He used his technical knowledge to hack into HeartMed's internal systems, while she used her CEO access codes. They extracted financial records, emails, everything Parker had tried to hide. Police sirens wailed outside. Lights, loudspeakers. Parker appeared with officers pointing at Ethan. That's him. He broke into our system, tried to blackmail our CEO. He's dangerous. Ethan was handcuffed, while Sophie protested. The twins were crying. Everything was falling apart despite the evidence they'd gathered. As they led him to the police car, he whispered to Sophie, Don't stay silent. You know the truth. Tell them. She nodded, but fear was in her eyes. Fear of Parker, fear of losing her daughters, fear of the system that seemed designed to protect powerful men who did terrible things. But before Parker could drive away the victorious, before Ethan could be locked away and silenced, something happened. The twins had been wearing small backpack purses. Inside one of them, Ethan had hidden the USB drive with all the evidence, slipped it there when Parker wasn't looking. The next morning, anonymously uploaded from an internet cafe, the video evidence hit every news outlet simultaneously. Parker accepting bribes, Parker ordering the chip modifications, Parker threatening Sophie on recorded security footage. The city of Geneva exploded with outrage. HeartMed's stock crashed. Parker was arrested while trying to flee to France. The truth, once hidden, now impossible to ignore. Sophie personally went to the police station, demanded Ethan's release, stood before cameras, and said, This man saved my life twice, once from drowning, once from being silenced by fear. He's a hero. Anyone who says different is lying. When they removed his handcuffs, she hugged him in front of everyone. You saved me from the water, then saved me from my own fear. He just smiled, exhausted and relieved. We saved each other. That's how it works. 1 month later, HeartMed underwent complete restructuring. Sophie established the Phoenix Aid Fund, a national traffic safety program, using company resources to ensure what happened to Anna and nearly happened to her would never happen to others. Ethan became chief technical advisor, bringing his real-world experience to a company that had forgotten to value it. Their story spread through media. The man from the coffee shop, how a blind date became a rescue mission and exposed corporate corruption. The twin girls played with Lily, all three laughing together, making plans for sleepovers and adventures, healing the way children do when given safety and love. Sophie thanked him during a quiet moment in his garage where he was teaching the girls basic car maintenance. You didn't just save my life. You taught me that good people still exist, that not everyone is corrupt or selfish or cruel. Ethan replied while showing the girls how to check tire pressure. No road is safe if we just stand and watch people drown. Someone has to jump in. Ethan installed a small memorial plaque near St. Pierre Bridge for those who turned back. Connected to it, an emergency call button. When pressed, the bridge lit up with special lights, alerting nearby rescue services, ensuring no one else would die waiting for help that came too late. Sophie stood with him at the unveiling ceremony, watched light reflect on the lake water, said quietly, "You taught me how to live again, how to be brave, how to fight even when scared. You taught me something too, that Anna would want me to save people, to keep living, to not let grief turn me bitter and closed off." The twins ran up, grabbed both their hands. "Can we light it up, please?" Together, all of them pressed the button. The bridge illuminated beautifully, a beacon of hope where there had almost been tragedy. People gathered, took photos, understood the symbol. One person choosing courage had changed everything. That evening, back at Sophie's house, much nicer than his apartment, but somehow feeling like home with Lily's drawings on the fridge and the twins' toys scattered everywhere, they cooked dinner together. "Is this weird?" Sophie asked while chopping vegetables. "Going from blind date disaster to this? Weirdest thing I've ever experienced. Also the best. So we're doing this? Really doing this?" "I think we already are. Question is whether we're brave enough to admit it." She kissed him, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. That night, for the first time since Anna died, Ethan slept without nightmares. No dreams of drowning, no visions of ambulances failing. Just peace, and hope for a future he thought was impossible. 1 year later, almost to the day, the Phoenix Safety Lab opened its doors to public ceremony and celebration. A state-of-the-art facility dedicated to testing and improving emergency vehicle systems, ensuring that faulty equipment would never again kill people who trusted it to save their lives. The building itself was symbolic, built partially with recycled materials from decommissioned ambulances, including parts from the very ambulance that had failed Anna 3 years ago. Not as memorial to tragedy, but as commitment that tragedy would create change. Ethan and Sophie stood on stage together, no longer awkward or uncertain but solid, partners in every sense. 3 children holding hands between them, Lily and the twins now inseparable best friends who finished each other's sentences. Sophie spoke to the gathered crowd of city officials, medical professionals, journalists, families who'd lost people to equipment failure, her voice steady and strong. "A year ago, I thought fate was cruel, random, meaningless, that bad things happen to good people for no reason. Today, I believe fate is opportunity, the chance for people to find each other exactly when they need to most, not despite danger, but through it." Ethan continued, reading from notes Lily had helped him write. "I lost someone I loved because of silence, because people didn't speak up when they saw problems, because profit mattered more than safety, because convenience mattered more than lives. Today, I choose to speak loudly, clearly, constantly for those who deserve to be saved. For Anna, for everyone." The audience rose in standing ovation, not for their unlikely romance, but for their mission, for taking personal tragedy and grief and anger, and creating institutional change, for proving that individual action could challenge systems that seemed too big to fight. Media coverage focused not on the fairy tale blind date story, but on the policy changes they'd pushed through, the safety regulations now law, the independent oversight board that couldn't be bribed or intimidated. Final scene, sunset over St. Pierre Bridge, the emergency beacon glowing softly in the gathering dusk, a permanent reminder that someone had chosen courage when easier to choose safety. Ethan, Sophie, Lily, and the twin girls stood together on the bridge itself, watching light dance on water, feeling the wind that had once brought terror, now bringing peace and possibility. One of the twins asked with that directness children have, "Daddy Ethan, did you know you'd save Mom when you went to the cafe that night?" He knelt down to her level so she could see his face clearly. "No, sweetheart, I just knew I couldn't leave someone drowning, even someone I'd never met, even when it was scary, even when police said to wait. Sometimes waiting means dying. That's what heroes do," Lily added wisely, with the solemnity of a child who's lost a parent and understands mortality too young. Heroes do what needs doing, that's all. Nothing special about it, just necessary, just human. Sophie wrapped her arms around all of them, creating a circle, a family built not from blood or traditional romance, but from choice and courage, and showing up when it mattered most, from crisis that revealed character. Words appeared on screen as the scene faded to black. Sometimes the person who saves you is the one you were meant to meet all along. Not despite the danger, but because of it. Not in spite of the timing, but because of it. Not by accident, but by necessity. Ethan looked at Anna's photo on his phone one last time before putting it away in his wallet, not forgetting but finally able to move forward without guilt. Thank you for teaching me to be brave, for showing me what love looks like. I'll keep saving you, people. I'll keep fighting. I promise, and I think you'd like Sophie. I think you'd like who I've become. And in that promise, in that bridge lighting up every single evening when activated by emergency, in that family formed from crisis and conscious choice, Anna's death meant something beyond loss. Not redemption, because her death couldn't be redeemed, but continuation, her values living on. Her love of helping people manifesting through Ethan's work, and Sophie's company reforms, and 3 children learning that courage matters, that action matters, that one person can change systems if they refuse to stay silent. The blind date that never happened became the relationship that saved 2 families from drowning in different ways. The coincidence that looked like cosmic joke became destiny that looked like answered prayer. And the man who almost left before the door opened, who almost gave up on love and connection and trust, became the father, partner, advocate who changed an entire system because he refused to walk away from someone drowning. Not just in water, but in fear, in corruption, in systems designed to protect power instead of people. They walked off the bridge together as a family. 5 people who'd found each other through tragedy and choice, heading home to a life that felt earned, felt deserved, felt real, in ways that required no performance or pretense. Just presence, just showing up, just saying yes when the door burst open and someone screamed for help. That was enough. That was everything. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, leave a comment and subscribe to Hidden Heart Stories. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten.